in today's video. In today's video, I'll be giving a 2024 election prediction between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Now, this is actually a very realistic scenario. We could easily see this. So I'll get immediately started by labeling all of Harris's safe states. Colorado will be safe. So will Illinois. It's not going to be likely. Colorado, you just need to shift it 1.5% to the left. And I think she's already a strong nominee for a state like Colorado. But against Trump, she will probably win it by over 50%. Now, for all of Trump's safe states, not Colorado, he will not win that. Montana's safe. Kansas will probably be safe. Because Harris is too bad among white working class voters. Or, what am I saying? White rural voters, excuse me. All three, the first and third congressional district, along with the at-large vote in Nebraska, are all safe. Now, on for Harris's likely states. New Mexico will be likely. Virginia will also be likely. I think that obviously New Mexico, she could do a little bit worse. She could win by 7-8%. But I think she'll probably shift it a little bit to the left, like 11%. Trump could do very well, though, but it'll probably be a likely margin. Virginia, I actually think that Harris is a very strong candidate for a state like this. I've discussed why in previous videos. I think that she's a strong candidate for all of those black voters in Virginia. She's also a very strong suburban candidate and could do very well in D.C. suburbs, along with being a fairly strong candidate for all those richer voters. And then in New Hampshire, I don't see Trump improving on his margins, even against Kamala Harris. I think that Harris would actually be a fairly strong candidate for a state like New Hampshire. And same with Maine. She'll probably also win Maine by a likely margin. Now, for Trump's likely states, first off, Alaska, South Carolina, Ohio, Iowa, and Maine's 2nd Congressional District. Now, Alaska, Trump won by 10%. I actually think that Harris could maybe do pretty well there. It's kind of hard to tell how she would do, but it would probably still end up being likely. South Carolina, she'll probably win. He'll probably win, but she'll probably lose by a likely margin. I don't see her doing poorly enough among black voters to lose it by anything larger than 15%. Iowa and Ohio, she's such a horrible candidate for voters in these states. She could, especially against Trump, she could actually lose Iowa by a safe margin. I just doubt it will happen. It'll probably be like 11-10% margin victory. Ohio should probably lose by like 9-10%, and Maine second. She actually could do better in, but she'll probably still lose by like 10%. Now moving on to Harris's lean states. First off, it's the state of Nevada, and I'll discuss that. It's very controversial. Then Minnesota, and those are all of her lean states. Oh, I also forgot to mention, Nebraska's second will be likely. Trump won't be able to win it by a large enough, or Trump won't be able to do well enough in Lincoln and Omaha. Anyways, moving on. Biden won Nevada by 2.4%. If we go back, if he won it by 2.4%, I think that Harris would do very well in Las Vegas and probably win Clark County by like 11%. Probably do a little bit worse in Washoe County, win it probably by more like 2%. So she probably won't do as well in Washoe County. Probably do better in Clark County. I'll probably win it by the state. That is by like 1.3%. It could be like 0.9, 0.8, so it could end up being tilt. I'm just gonna go label it lean. Like I said, could very easily be tilt. Tilt blue. I may even label it tilt blue. It could go tilt. Next up, the state of Minnesota. We go look at Minnesota. Biden won it by, I believe, 7.9%. So that's obviously a fairly large margin of victory. I just don't think that Harris will be able to do well enough up in the iron range with a lot of these white working class voters. She might lose Lake County. I wouldn't bet on it, but she could, and it'll probably end up being a lean county, or excuse me, a lean state. And those are my only two lean states, for Harris. For Trump's lean states, Texas, Florida, and Wisconsin. Now, if we go look at Texas, he won it by slightly over 5%. I think that Harris will do well enough among minority voters and be able to raise minority turnout enough to do fairly well. Just not amazing. And it'll probably be like a 3-4% margin of victory for Trump. In the state of Florida, she could do very well in Miami-Dade. However, I just don't see her doing well enough or coming close to Clinton levels. If she's able to get Biden levels in Miami-Dade, or Clinton levels, she's already a strong candidate for areas like Pinellas, Seminole, Duval County, Jefferson County, Monroe County. I think she's already a strong candidate for areas like that. So she'll probably end up winning if she's able to do very well in Miami-Dade County. However, that's not a given. She could still do horribly in Miami-Dade County, similar to Biden, and it really does depend on how she's able to deflect attacks of socialism. Because as I wrote in an article that I recently wrote on my website, she is more assertive than Biden is, and could deflect attacks that she's a socialist or a communist. However, she also just might not be a strong enough candidate, and that is definitely very true. She just may not be strong enough to be able to do it. So I would ultimately say that she's probably going to lose Florida by a lean margin. In the state of Wisconsin, I mean, like, it's the most conservative state in the Rust Belt, and she is an awful candidate for the Rust Belt, I think. The Democrats, if they're trying to do well in the Rust Belt, are sort of shooting themselves in the foot if they run Harris. A lot of this western Wisconsin area that Biden actually lost, a lot of this is like white working class voters. Harris would do horribly over here. Probably wouldn't lose La Crosse County, but probably do fairly bad. I do think that she'd be able to do well in Milwaukee. In Madison, I think she could do very well in those areas. Though she would probably lose Door County. I do think that she'd be able to do well in Milwaukee, Madison, as I said, and some of these suburbs, maybe. But I just don't see her doing well enough among white voters to be able to do anything. I think Trump will probably win by like 1.5%, 2%. And that is it for all the lean states. For Harris's tilt states, Arizona, Georgia, and Michigan. Obviously, Trump's tilt states, Pennsylvania and North Carolina. So if we go look at Arizona, Biden won it by 0.3%. Harris, I think, is a very strong candidate for an area like, or especially against Trump. She's a very strong candidate for a state like Arizona. I mean, like, she'd be able to do well enough in Phoenix. I think that she's a fairly strong candidate for Phoenix, and she's also a very strong candidate for Phoenix suburbs. I mean, like, in Arizona, the state suburbs are still red. She'd probably win Maricopa County by 3 to 4%, but she'd also probably do poorly enough among a lot of these rural white voters, for it not to mean much. And then we go look at Georgia. I mean, like, just like Arizona, we've seen Democrats winning here by very large margins, or at least for a state that's as competitive as it is. We've seen Democrats win here by fairly large margins. I think Harris would probably do bad among, like, rural voters. Probably do well enough in Atlanta, and probably raise turnout enough, especially with help from Stacey Abrams. Like, if she's her running mate, she's almost certainly going to win the state, probably by a lean margin. But she could also pick someone strong for the Rust Belt, like Sherrod Brown or Tammy Baldwin. But as we look at this, I think that she could do very well in Atlanta and raise turnout enough to be able to win it by lean margins. However, she would do bad enough in the rural areas that it'll probably end up going down to a tilt. And then the state of Michigan, I mean, like, it probably wouldn't be a 3%, 2.8% margin of victory. It'll probably be more like a 0.8, 0.7, 0.6. I think that she would be a very strong candidate for Detroit, or at least a fairly strong candidate. And I think she could do well in the state and Detroit suburbs, but she would just do horribly among white, rural, working class voters, and it would probably ultimately screw her over, and she'd probably win it by a tilt margin. And as for Trump, I mean, like, Pennsylvania is going red if it's Harris versus Trump. Trump narrowly lost it. He also narrowly won it. But you have to keep in mind, this is against Joe Biden, who was a very strong candidate for the state of Pennsylvania, and he was from there. Harris would probably lose Erie County, and probably do horribly in a lot of these rural areas of Pennsylvania. However, Pennsylvania suburbs are still red, and they're going to continue to shift. I just don't think that would be able to override it. If she weren't such a horrible candidate among white working class voters, if she were just average, and she were a strong suburban candidate, I would say that Pennsylvania is a lean state, and Michigan maybe even a likely state, but she isn't. So it'll probably end up being a tilt Trump state, just because he would do well enough among the white working class. In the state of North Carolina, Harris wouldn't be able to do well enough in rural areas. There's also always the possibility that she does end up being a bad candidate for minority voters, in which case she would do horribly in Charlotte and could actually lose the state by a lean margin. The only upside I see for her is that North Carolina suburbs are still red, and they're going to continue to trend, and she could do very well in them. I just don't see them trending enough, especially considering the fact that she's a bad rural candidate over the next 4 years to be able to get her to get her a victory in the state. So yeah, this is my final prediction. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for my next video, and I will see you all there. Bye.